Students, today we are going to start a new chapter and we will revise it. That chapter is light, and through this CRL we will recall what we have learnt about reflection of light. Before that, let me tell you that light is a kind of energy which enables us to see objects. Okay, so now we will revise the reflection of light.
Reflection of light. We know that when light falls on a shiny surface such as mirror, it gets reflected. Many rays of light are incident on the reflecting surface. For the sake of simplicity, let us consider one of these to study the phenomenon of reflection of light. Do you recall what an incident ray of light, a reflected ray of light, and a normal to the reflecting surface are? An incident ray of light is a ray of light that strikes the reflecting surface. A reflected ray of light is a ray of light that bounces off the reflecting surface. A normal is an imaginary line drawn perpendicular to the reflecting surface at the point of incidence. Let us understand the ray diagram we just discussed with a simple experiment. Here, we shine a torch on a mirror through a narrow slit. The light comes out through the slit in the form of a narrow beam of light. For practical purposes, let us consider this narrow beam of light as an incident ray. This incident ray strikes the surface of the mirror and gets reflected. If we draw a normal to the surface at the point of incidence, we can measure the angles which the incident and the reflected ray make with the normal. The angle of incidence is the angle which the incident ray makes with the normal at the point of incidence. The angle of reflection is the angle which the reflected ray makes with the normal at the point of incidence. The phenomenon of reflection of light takes place in accordance with the laws of reflection. There are two laws of reflection. The first law of reflection states that the incident ray, the normal at the point of incidence, and the reflected ray lie in the same plane. A plane is a two-dimensional flat surface. The plane in which the incident ray, the normal, and the reflected ray lie is perpendicular to the surface of the mirror. The second law of reflection states that the angle of incidence and the angle of reflection are always equal. In summary, we can say that the phenomenon of reflection always takes place in accordance with the laws of reflection. According to the first law of reflection, the incident ray, the normal at the point of incidence, and the reflected ray lie in the same plane. According to the second law of reflection, the angle of incidence and the angle of reflection are always same.
Students, through this CRL, we will study the difference between the reflection from the smooth surface and from the rough surface, which is known as regular and diffused reflection. Let's study what happens when parallel rays of light are incident on a smooth surface like it is shown in this diagram. So you can see that parallel rays of rays of light are falling on a smooth plane surface, and now we have drawn normal to all these rays, right, through the surface from where the light rays have to reflect. So now let's study what happens when parallel rays of light are incident on smooth surface. Keeping angle of reflection equal to angle of incidence, in each case we can draw the reflected rays. The reflected rays of light are parallel to each other. Such a reflection from a smooth surface is called regular reflection. Students, now we will study about diffused reflection. So, let us study what happens when parallel rays of light are incident on rough or an irregular surface. We will use the laws of reflection to investigate, right? We will draw normals to the surface at the points of incidence of light, right? Notice that because of the irregularities of the surface at different points of incidence, the normals are in different directions. Keeping angle of reflection equal to angle of incidence, in each case we can draw the reflected rays like it has been shown in this diagram. So, these reflected rays of light are not parallel to each other. Such a reflection from a rough surface is called diffused reflection. So, we can summarize regular and diffused reflection as when parallel beams of light fall on a smooth surface, regular reflection takes place, and reflected parallel beams of light are obtained. Such a reflected beam of light can be glaring to our eyes. Consequently, sunlight or the light from a bulb be glaring to our eyes when reflected from smooth surfaces such as mirrors. Here you can see the regular reflection. Now, when parallel beams of light fall on an irregular surface, diffused reflection takes place and the reflected rays get scattered in different directions. Such reflected rays are responsible for making objects visible. Remember, we can only see objects when light reflected from them reach our eyes. This is a practice question for you. Try to solve it. Now we will study about refraction and dispersion of light. We know that light moves at different speeds in different media. You can see that light, first it is traveling in air, then it passes through the glass, right? So, if we take it as an example, speed of light is more in air as compared to that in glass. It is because different media have different optical densities. Between glass and air, glass is optically denser medium and air is optically less dense or optically rarer medium. Light travels faster in optically rarer medium and slower in optically denser medium. So in air, speed of light is more, and in glass, speed of light is less. So when light travels from one medium to another, its speed changes. So think what happens to a ray of light at the boundary of the two media with different optical densities. So let us draw a normal to the boundary of the two media at the point of incidence, like it has been done in this diagram. So what happens to a ray of light at the boundary of the two media with different optical densities? Answer is, while traveling from one medium to another medium of different optical densities, light bends, like it has been shown in this picture. So, what is refraction of light? We have seen that light bends towards the normal when it travels from optically rarer medium to optically denser medium. And light bends away from the normal when it travels from optically denser medium to optically rarer medium. This is called refraction. The angle made by the incident ray with the normal at the point of incidence is called angle of incidence, that is I, and the angle made by the refracted ray with the normal at the point of incidence is called angle of refraction. Here in this diagram you can see angle of incidence I and angle of refraction R. If light travels along the normal to the boundary of two media, it does not change its direction like it has been shown in this diagram. Why does a pencil appear bent when put in glass of water? Can you tell about it? The answer is, water is an optically denser medium and air is an optically rarer medium. While moving from water to air, light bends away from the normal before it reaches our eyes. Students, have you ever tried focusing sunlight on a paper using magnifying glass? So, as we studied in the last class, a magnifying glass is a convex lens. It can focus the sunlight on paper and might cause the paper to burn. Now we will learn about refraction of light through lenses. Let us look at different arrangements of the objects, the lenses, and the screen to study the image formation by lenses. Through this CRL, we will learn how to draw ray diagrams.
Hello students, do you know what's this? That's right, it's a convex lens. Did you know that we can burn a piece of paper using a convex lens? Yes, a convex lens can be used to focus the light from the sun onto a single point on a piece of paper, thereby generating enough heat to burn it. Let's observe what happens when a candle is placed at different positions in front of the same convex lens. We can see that images with different sizes and nature are obtained at different positions from the lens. These examples suggest that the position, the size, and the nature of the image formed depends on the placement of an object with respect to the lens. To understand this relation with more clarity, let's study the image formation by convex and concave lenses using ray diagrams. In order to draw the ray diagram, we first need to choose incident rays. Out of the many rays falling on the lens, 3 particular rays are chosen. The first incident ray is the ray which is parallel to the principal axis of a convex lens. It passes through the principal focus after refraction. However, in the case of a concave lens, a ray parallel to the principal axis appears to diverge from the principal focus after refraction. The second incident ray can be chosen to be the ray passing through the focus of a convex lens. This ray emerges parallel to the principal axis after refraction. In the case of a concave lens, the incident ray, which appears to meet the focus f2, actually emerges parallel to the principal axis after refraction. The third incident ray, passing through the optical center of the lens, emerges without any deviation after refraction. This is true for both concave and convex lenses. Let's now use these 3 incident rays to draw the ray diagrams for objects placed at different positions on the principal axis of the lens. We first draw the principal axis and a thin convex lens. Mark the optical center O at its center, the foci f1 and f2, and the centers of curvatures c1 and c2. Let's place our object at a point beyond c1. We use an arrow to indicate the position, size, and orientation of our object. Let's consider the ray of light starting at the arrowhead and parallel to the principal axis. This ray will pass through the focus after refraction. Let's consider another ray passing through the optical center. This ray will emerge without any deviation and meet the first ray at a point. The third ray passing through the focus will become parallel to the principal axis after refraction. It meets the other 2 rays at the same point. Now we draw an arrow perpendicular to the principal axis, having an arrowhead at a point where the 3 refracted rays meet. This arrow represents the image. The image is formed between f2 and c2. The image is real, inverted, and diminished in size. Being a real image, it can be obtained on a screen. Now, let's take the example of a concave lens. Draw a light ray parallel to the principal axis. The ray appears to diverge from the focus after refraction. Let's choose another light ray passing through the optical center. We see that the 2 rays do not meet after refraction, but can be extended backwards to obtain a virtual image on the same side as the object. Thus, a virtual, erect, and diminished image is formed between f1 and O. Through these examples, we have learned that we can draw ray diagrams just by knowing how 3 particular incident rays bend after refraction through a lens. You can now draw ray diagrams for objects in different positions on your own and find out the position, size, and nature of the images formed. Bye! Happy learning!
Through this CRL, we will learn about the working of human eye.
Our eyes enable us to see the beautiful world around us. We know that we are able to see an object when the light reflected from it enters our eyes. The human eye is roughly spherical in shape. It has a white outer coating which protects the interior of the eye. Light enters our eye through the exposed transparent area called the cornea. Behind the cornea, is a colored muscular structure called the iris. It gives a characteristic eye color to different people. The iris has a small black opening called the pupil, which allows the light to enter further inside the eye. The size of the pupil is controlled by the iris. When the ambient light is bright, the pupil becomes smaller. This restricts the amount of light entering the eye. When the ambient light is dim, the pupil becomes large. This allows more light to enter the eye, which helps us see objects. Behind the pupil, there is a convex lens, which forms an inverted image of the object on a screen at the back of the eye. This screen is called the retina. We can clearly see both far off and nearby objects. Why is this so? This is because the ciliary muscles control the thickness of the convex lens. When these muscles are relaxed, the lens is thin and can easily focus the images of faraway objects on the retina. When viewing nearby objects, the ciliary muscles contract to increase the thickness of the lens. The retina contains two types of photoreceptor cells, rods and cones. Rods are sensitive to dim light and cones are sensitive to bright light. Do you know how we can see so many colors? Cones are responsible for perceiving colors. For this reason, we cannot see colors in dim light. The optic nerve carries the signals from the cells to the brain, which processes and perceives the image as erect. At the junction of the retina and the optic nerve, there are no sensory cells. This area is called the blind spot, as any image being formed here will not be visible to us. So, now that we know the structure of the eye, let's understand how we are able to see this tree. The light reflected off of the tree enters our eyes through the cornea. The iris constricts to control the amount of light entering the eye. The ciliary muscles adjust the thickness of the lens so that the image of the tree is formed on the retina. The cone cells on the retina perceive the green color of the tree. The optic nerve carries the information of the image to the brain. Here, the image is processed and an erect image is produced.
Now we will learn about the defects of vision. Here in this diagram you can see that our eye can see the objects that are far away. It can also see the objects that are nearby. We can see objects that are far away as well as the objects that are nearby clearly because the ciliary muscles control the thickness of the eye lens. How can we see the objects that are far away as well as the objects that are nearby clearly? When focusing on faraway objects, the thickness of the lens decreases. When focusing on nearby objects, the thickness of the lens increases, that you can see in this diagram. When the distance between the eye and the object is less than specific value, the ciliary muscles cannot contract further to increase the thickness of the eye lens and to produce a clear image of the retina. This nearest distance of distinct vision is 25 centimeters in humans. So we cannot clearly see the objects that are kept nearer to or closer than 25 centimeter to our eyes. Now we will learn about defects of vision. Why some elderly people use spectacles while reading. Usually, with the age, the ciliary muscles become weak and are unable to contract enough to see any text at the 25 centimeter. To correct this defect, elderly people use spectacles. So, defects of vision, first one is far-sightedness. It is the defect of the eye in which people can clearly see objects far from them but not the ones that are near. This defect of vision is also known as hypermetropia. Why do some of your friends use spectacles while they are reading something on the blackboard? Sometimes the ciliary muscles become weak and are unable to make the lens thin so that we can see faraway objects. So, to correct this defect, people use spectacles. This defect of vision is known as nearsightedness. It is a defect of the eyes in which people can clearly see objects near them but not the objects that are far away from them. This defect of vision is also known as myopia. Another defect of eye is cataract, in which a cataract is a clouding of the lens of the eye, which leads to eyesight becoming foggy and subsequently a decrease in vision. The symptoms of cataract are faded colors, blurry or double vision, halos around the light, trouble with bright lights, trouble seeing at night. Cataract can be treated by surgically replacing the opaque eye lens with an artificial lens. So here you can see the summary of defects.